Good afternoon, everyone. It's the Because We Win Live reaction show with myself, Steve Wyss, and I'm with professional handicapper Neil Channing, who's back. How you doing, Neil, on this lovely Sunday here in the UK?
It's very relaxing, actually. It's been a relaxing day. Goal fest in the championship so far. 0-0, 0-0. I mean, I suppose that's not really a huge surprise. Those first legs of the playoffs, especially when it's such a big prize, it's hard to go out and gamble and play adventurous football, isn't it? Really.
It's not been a good day for the goals backers so far in England, that's for sure. But yeah, you're right. It can get very, very tight, and I think the goals are more expected at Old Trafford because we've got a really big match coming up soon in the Premier League, Neil. And I mean, I actually think it's quite a tough one to bet on myself. It's not really one I would recommend staking too heavily in. But Manchester United, we're pretty sure this is the biggest ever price they have been at home in the Premier League era. BetRivers, you can get them plus 750 with BetRivers to win this game.
They're drifting all the time, aren't they? I mean, just in the last 10 minutes since the team news has come out, Arsenal are shorter than minus 300 now. On exchanges, and Man United are bigger than 8-1. They're almost 9-1. I mean, this is unprecedented. Easily the biggest price I've ever seen Man United at home. I saw Nigel Seeley saying the handicap is kind of minus 1.5 on the Asian handicap, Arsenal. So let me just check that because I think it's possibly even gone up a bit higher than that.
Probably
it's
minus
1.75 now. Yeah, it's minus 1.75, and it's kind of a pick 'em at that level. But the minus 1.5 level, you can bet Arsenal at minus 125. And I saw Seeley; he had a good one. He said it's 55 games at Old Trafford where they're hosting Arsenal since Arsenal won by 2 clear goals. And I can't remember who he said scored 2 goals. Was it? It wasn't Frank Stapleton. It was Alan Sunderland. I think he said scored 2 goals. I liked that. I also saw somebody on Twitter that had a good one. They were saying that in the Wenger period, when everyone wanted Wenger out and things were going very wrong at Arsenal, he remembers Man United being roughly the same price as Arsenal are today, and thinking that was a bit of an overreaction and a bit ridiculously short. And Man United won at home 8-2. I don't think they'll be doing that today.
I remember that one. Yeah, I remember that. It was a real big beating, and I think everyone expected Man United to win that day, but not by the amount that they did.
It's kind of mad, isn't it? Really?
Could Arsenal get the revenge here? There's some people suggesting this could be a really, really big win.
Well, I suppose. I mean, I suppose the point is that they just need to win, don't they? It doesn't matter to them. There's no kind of goal difference implications or anything like that. If they do go 2-0 up, with 20 minutes to go, they'll be looking to run it into the corner, won't they? They're not going to really. Why are they? They're not going to be interested in pressing up and trying to win 4-0. So if Man United score, you are going to struggle to cover the handicap, basically. But I can't really get a handle on it. I don't really have a strong view. It wouldn't surprise me that much if Arsenal won 3-0. It wouldn't surprise me that much if they started off slightly tentatively, given that it is an important game for them, and it was 0-0 at half time or something like that. I haven't had a bet. I don't think I'm going to have a bet in the game.
I think if I was to take anything, and you're right, I've not had a bet either in this. I would be leaning towards both teams score no at plus 110, just because Arsenal's defensive metrics and statistics are so good this season. And I'll look at the Man United attacking lineup today here. Højlund up front, Diallo, McTominay, Garnacho, Amrabat and Mino in midfield. I'm not sure I'd trust them to get a goal against this Arsenal defense.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout. That's not a bad shout. I wouldn't really
just cover the 0-0 as well.
But I wouldn't fancy being the other side of that anyway.
But it's a tough one. The handicap is, plus 800 now, Man United with BetRivers on the money line. As big as that is, I couldn't get involved in that. Arsenal are going to win. Arsenal are going to win the game, aren't they? Arsenal are going to win the game, aren't they? Just probably a question of, is it by 1 goal? Is it by a lot? Let's see. The kickoff is very soon. and I'll be interested to see how this one starts, because I think if Arsenal do get off on the front foot, the crowd here at Old Trafford is going to be pretty downbeat. I mean, it's pretty downbeat anyway. I mean, I don't think any United fan
you
expects.
can't be, if you're a Man United fan, you can't really be going there with huge optimism, are you? The season that they've had and the way it's been going just recently, and it's Arsenal. I mean, I don't know. I just think quite a lot of season ticket holders might be staying at home.
Let's just talk about a couple of matches then that we might be able to have bets on today. We'll talk about before we move on to some of the topics like European Championships and possibly, amongst other things, a little bit of the PGA Championship later on. I would say later on, Neil, in France, watch out for quite a lot of goals overall. But I think in the derby of Eastern France, Strasbourg against Metz is, for me, an over game, and the line isn't high enough at 2.5. Based on what we've seen teams recently. So if people after a bet, as I say, I wouldn't be looking at unders at all in France this evening, as I just think we're at the time of year where teams are they're fed up with defending, really. So if you can find the right goal line.
I always fancy the evening games as well, like the evening kickoffs, compared with like the early morning kickoffs. I always fancy that, there's going to be, people are up for it a bit more in terms of going out there and playing more open football. Is that me? I don't know.
I agree. Really I agree with you. Yeah.
I mean, you hear all the managers always moaning about, like in the Premier, about 12:30 kickoffs and stuff, don't you? But I do sometimes feel like, I know when I bet an over in an early game and it's 0-0 at half time, I'm often thinking to myself, damn early kickoff, that's cost me.
Well, have you ever done? I mean, I don't know if the word sort of circadian rhythms is ever something you consider, Neil, in terms of the human body clock. But
biorhythms, that used to be a thing. Somebody used to do that on snooker betting. I remember that they had the biorhythms of all the players. I don't know.
So early kickoffs can mess with the body clocks of the players, especially if you're away from home at say 12:30. This is more of a thing actually in the States, I think, in NFL betting, when a West Coast side travels to the East Coast for the early kickoff as well. It can mess around with them a bit.
Well, yeah, although having said that became such an ingrained thing in the betting public that it turned out that it doesn't work, because the market's overreacted to it. And if you bet against that now, and you bet that team that's travelled, you can actually beat the market, because too many people are like, oh, this is an obvious situation. It's funny, isn't it? I don't think the soccer market over here or in Asia reacts quite as quickly. I think the NFL market's better at adapting to stuff like that.
They certainly do. And just looking at the two managers shaking hands, it's unbelievable contrast with the hair. We've got one manager with no hair, and Mikel Arteta has black hair. It always just looks so slick, doesn't it? Incredible.
I thought you were gonna make a comment about my my fabulous hairstyle then for a second.
Well, that is the Neil Channing style, isn't it? It can be arranged at every barber across across England. Ask for a Channers, and we'll see what gets done there. But have you got any? I mean, I was going to say, Neil, there's a couple of Italian games.
I'm starting to feel like as the price shortens, having said I wouldn't have a bet, it just, I don't know, it's got shorter and shorter. I couldn't bet Arsenal at this kind of price. I mean, on the exchanges now, it's like 1.31, 1.32. If you gave me a free bet, I'd probably have to bet Man United on the handicap, but I don't know.
There's a question from Shane, and welcome in, Shane. Last season, it's the last day of the season next weekend, and he's envisaging poor prices on the Premier League, and the whole world will be betting on the over goals as well. Do you have any advice, Neil, for last round of the season? I suppose this can apply to any league, I suppose, can't it?
Anything well, I actually, I'll sort of slightly stick with what I said and say that I don't think the market does overreact. I mean, there's clearly a reason why the goals are set higher in the last couple of the weeks of the season. We're playing on firmer pitches. The players can pass it around a bit more. It's not raining and windy. Better weather. I just feel like there's a whole load of reasons why there'd be more games at the end of the season. Obviously, in matches where both teams are going for it. They open up, but also goals are up generally these days anyway. The last couple of years, you know, betting overs in the Premier just blindly in all games has been profitable again this season. I don't really. I'm not really agreeing with the premise of your question, Shane. Sorry about that. I kind of feel like the market will just, as usual, be slightly underreacting to what we're seeing in professional football these days. And I can imagine me just ploughing on and betting a whole bunch of overs again next week.
It is the
Yeah.
go-to thing at the minute because it's been an unbelievable year for goals in general. It must be said, and like I say,
But it's
be
not.
on the
It's not like a
lookout.
fluke. It's not like a fluke year, is it? I mean,
No,
it's just a trend that's continued over the last 3 or 4 years.
do you know what the mad thing as
Um,
well on expected goals in the Premier League? I think 12 teams out of the 20 have actually underachieved in front of
mm,
goals. So there should have been even more goals,
yeah,
according to the
yeah,
stats,
yeah.
which is absolutely outrageous, isn't it?
And yet, overs betters are absolutely killing it. I mean, I've said before on here, I largely with my soccer betting, I'm following some guys in. I'm just having a look. They had 308 bets on the Premier this season. I would say, I mean, I could break it down into what kind of bets they had, but that would take me a bit of time. Um, Probably 80% of their bets were on overs. Some of them were just on Asian handicap. Uh, they won half their bets this year, and they've made nearly 3% ROI in the Premier. It's just pretty much just betting over. I mean, not in every game. Obviously, they don't bet over in every game, but they're selectively betting over, and seems to be a
Yeah.
winning thing, really.
There's a
I mean,
couple
I
of
can't really.
Italian games today. Any overs for you
Yes,
there? Juventus, Salernitana, Atalanta against Roma. Both games look pretty decent for
yeah.
goals.
I'm sure we haven't had a bet yet in the Atalanta game, but I'm certain we'll bet the over in that game, 100%. I don't know
Yeah, I
how
think so.
strong that will be. The Juve game, that's a bit trickier, but I'd imagine we haven't had a bet in either so far. I'll let you know on the Juve game. That'll
Yeah.
probably, if we have a bet, it'll probably come through in the next few minutes. But yeah, I would be pretty happy betting over in both of those games. Really.
I've got the Bayern
Yeah, the
Munich game on in
Juve
the
the Juve
background.
game is the Juve game is 3.5 line, and it's kind of roughly pick
High
'em
line now.
over under.
It's a high line
Yeah,
now. Yeah,
yeah,
really high line. Bayern Munich just scored against Wolfsburg after just 4 minutes in the Bundesliga. I've got that game on in the background. Number 34, whoever that was. I don't know the Bayern numbers off the top of my head.
well,
And
that's a
that kind
bit
of lead.
poor, Steve. That's a little bit
Someone
poor,
called,
isn't
I've
it?
never
Really?
actually seen Zvonorek. I'm not familiar with this player. Lovro Zvonorek. I wonder how many had him as first goal scorer in this game
Not
for
me.
Bayern Munich. A Croatian player who has not even been in the squad in the last 2 games, according to the stats that I'm using. But he has opened the scoring for De Bayern against Wolfsburg today. And I suppose this kind of goes on to the next topic, actually. In Germany this summer is the European Championships, Euro 2024. And I think we're getting to the stage where a lot of people are already thinking about that tournament from a betting perspective.
Yeah.
Obviously there are some of the summer leagues across the world that people can get stuck into, but it's the big tournaments that often catch the eye, get the biggest handle with the bookmakers. Are you an international soccer bettor, Neil, or do you just would prefer to stay with club football?
No, I love it because
Mm.
it's. I mean, obviously, because it's wall to wall football, you can watch it all day long. I probably watch more football during the Euros than I will do during the rest of the season. Really, I hardly ever watch any football these days. I have loads of bets on it and don't really watch very much. Um,
But you will watch the
but
Euros a bit.
I'll probably watch a bit of the Euros. It's hard to avoid it, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
to be honest, I haven't had a bet yet. I haven't really given it a huge amount of thought. I was kind of surprised knowing I was coming on here, had a quick look at the odds and found that England were the favourites. Wow. I mean,
I am a bit surprised by that as
obviously
well.
being English and betting, largely against English bookmakers, uh, it's going to be hard to not find myself betting against England quite a lot during the competition, just because the bookmakers, there will be a bias towards England. Generally, I think they'll always be shorter than I anticipate they should be.
Yeah.
The market definitely has that bias, so I guess I'll be doing that. But the main thing, I think, if I could offer anybody any advice on the Euros, anyone who wants to take my advice, is that it's a perfect example of one of the most important concepts in betting, and that's recency bias. So the market so far on who wins the Euros is not hugely liquid. I mean, there's only been less than 500,000 matched on the main exchange in the UK, which is not very much, and it'll probably be 5 million before it starts. But the money that has been matched at this stage is liable to be more expert money. People betting several weeks, almost a month before the tournament starts. They're tying up their money, and that's because they think they've seen something. They're not just having their interest bet. The people having their interest bet are going to come on the weekend before, really. So I think you can assume that the prices are fairly solid, and obviously the factors that go into making those prices, the strength of the teams, current form, what kind of group they've got, the fixtures, that kind of thing. That's a multifaceted bunch of things that make up the price. They'll all then play one game and the prices will completely change. It's just ridiculous. It's unbelievable how much people want to throw out of the window the 50 variables that have made up the price of a team, just based often on 45 minutes of football. It's ridiculous.
I remember, just before you continue, I remember, and you probably profited from this, knowing you. The tournament, Spain eventually won the tournament, but they lost their first game against Switzerland.
I remember that one. Yeah.
And everyone was already writing them off, even though they didn't play that badly, I didn't think, but they lost the game. And I suppose that's a prime example of where this, you're right, probably after 45 minutes, people have made their opinion up about what a team's like. So it's crazy.
It is crazy. And it happens in every World Cup and every Euros. So I'll be definitely looking to try and keep a level head, try not to get carried away on just one result, and just try not to fall into the recency bias trap. I mean, actually, to be honest with you, if you are going to watch the games, you're probably better off watching it without the commentary, because the commentary will often get you into the recency bias trap, because people just get carried away. They get overly excited by, somebody wins 3-0 or whatever, the next big thing. Yeah, sure. Obviously, right now, say, for example, France are about just over 4-1, Germany are around about 5-1. There's not much between them. If I watch France play and they play really poorly, I watch Germany play, they play really well. Yeah, it's possible those prices ought to be flipped around, but there's no chance in my mind that one of those two should be double the price of the other one on the back of just not playing very well but drawing. But that's the sort of thing that can happen. So that's what I'll be looking out for in the.
How can you stop yourself going down the rabbit hole of recency bias? Because I think we all possibly succumb to it at times.
Well, I think
is it about having base ratings and things like that?
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think it's also, I mean, clearly if somebody wins 3-0 or 4-0, that's the kind of team that everyone's going to get carried away with. Whereas if somebody is expected to win and they draw 0-0 and look awful, that's the kind of team that everyone will want to bet against next time. So I think that's really the best way of doing it, is just to sort of look out for those slightly unusual results, and just bet against them, really. I mean, it is interesting because obviously the groups is just a small group. That it's not going to be very many games, and one result to an extent is important. I mean, of course, one result is important in a group where you're not going to play very many matches, but it's important in terms of the team winning the tournament, it's important. It's more important to the players than it is the betting market. In terms of the betting market, it shouldn't change that much when we come to price up the next game. It can change it a little bit. Of course, it changes it a little bit, but you just have to make sure that you try and stay level-headed.
You have obviously been on the other side of the fence quite a lot in your career with the bookmaking side. And do you, I mean, is there often more staked in these tournaments than, say, a whole league season? Because do people get kind of giddy because, well, I suppose it's a case of, I reckon more people would bet in the, say, the European Championships because it's on more. It's on terrestrial TV, free-to-air TV everywhere. These. Is there a really big handle on the matches usually in the tournament outright?
In both situations, the outright, you strike 90% of the business before a ball's been kicked. So once the tournament started, hardly anybody bets on the outright. Like maybe they'll have a bet on, maybe they'll pick a favourite and an outsider that they like, and then maybe have some bets on teams to win the groups, that kind of thing. Maybe do a parlay of 3 teams to win their group or something like that. And then all the teams will play their first game, and anyone that's doing badly will possibly think about averaging out by pressing up at bigger prices. But largely speaking, most people are kind of done with having a bet. Now, if the group stages have finished and one of maybe your outsider has got knocked out or your favourite is not doing very well, you might add and have another bet, pick a new team or something like that. But you almost take no business once the first game started. The amount of money that you're taking on the individual games, it just totally swamps the outright.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Some comments. Martin's come up with some interesting points about, the eye test is really important. There's a question here from Shane as well. Again, I think it's more of a general point, but importance of varying your own personal betting and utilizing other sources. If you find your own personal selections are underperforming, do your other sources vary out ever? I suppose he's maybe asking there, if you're struggling yourself, are you going to go to other sources for inspiration, perhaps?
Well, I'm definitely very happy to be an other source man. I mean, I think I bet on lots of sports, and it's impossible to keep up with all of them. There's just if you're just a football bettor and you bet on nothing else, even then it's impossible. I mean, there's just so much football.
Yeah.
I really think people need to specialise and just look at certain leagues and not look at other ones. You can become an expert on one particular league. Basically, with football, I've opted out of having an opinion. Really, I mean, I speak to a few people. I follow a syndicate, and occasionally I'll think, yeah, I kind of really agree with this bet they're having. But it's much more based on. It's never based on how teams played last time or who's coming into the side or anything like that. I always
Have you always trusted other sources, or is that something sort of in time that you've?
No, definitely. I've always done that. And I don't really understand why people wouldn't do that. I mean, obviously, like, we all read the sporting media. The internet's got I'm going to have loads of bets on the golf next week. I'm sure I'll read 10 previews of the tournament and listen to a bunch of podcasts where people are talking about who they fancy and why. And some of them I'll just think, God, this guy's talking nonsense, or I don't really agree with that, or whatever. But I'll be road testing my own thoughts by hearing what other people's thoughts are. And so that's kind of one way of sort of saying I'm, kind of taking someone else's opinion. But I might be dismissing it. I might not necessarily be agreeing with it all the time. But I'm not afraid to, like I'm involved in a tipping site. I might as well name check it. I never get a plug in here. Betting Emporium. And we have a guy that does the NFL. I used to do the NFL for Betting Emporium. And to be honest with you, we had a good start. And then we had a couple of sort of slightly average years where we basically broke even. And I was thinking, God, I'm spending so much time on this and it's not really going very well. And this other guy that we had that was doing some cricket and rugby for us, I know he's a big NFL fan. And I said to him, do you fancy taking over the NFL? And I also said, well, we need to change what we're doing. We're trying to bet against a very efficient market on the sides and totals, and we should focus on players to score because that's a much less efficient market. He's been doing it for 3 years now, and he's absolutely killing it. He's not had a losing year. He's barely had a losing week in 3 years. I think he's absolutely brilliant at what he does. I don't even watch the NFL anymore. I just plow into whatever he's doing totally without question. I don't even think about it. All it's done is just made my life so much easier. I don't sit up all night watching NFL
Fair
games.
play.
I don't have to read about the NFL. I don't have to think about it. And I'm making more money on it. So I'm very happy to abdicate responsibility.
Martin
I
said he
don't know.
just watched
Maybe
his
I'll abdicate
first.
responsibility on Man U Arsenal games to you, Steve, in the future.
Well, I don't. Yeah, if you're going to abdicate responsibility to me in soccer, it would probably not be the Premier League, actually.
Maybe the
I'm
French.
all right on the Premier League. I'm better, yeah, French or Norway or somewhere or whatever. But yeah, Martin says he just watched his first soccer game this year. Australian lifelong AFL supporter. Have you ever bet on AFL?
I have
Australian
watched
rules.
AFL. I think I have bet on it before. Yeah, there used to be a guy that used to send us a few games. I used to go to Australia for poker every year, and I would go to the tennis in January, and I'm pretty sure that I may be wrong because I may have got the seasons wrong, but I'm pretty sure the AFL was running around that time, and people would give me the odd, you got to bet this, you got to bet that, and I would follow them blindly. But
We once had
recreational stakes.
We had an Australian cricketer at our cricket club when my club was in the top division, and he was from the Melbourne region. And most of the clubs, I do believe, are in AFL are from the Melbourne region. And he was obsessed with the team. I think it might have been called Geelong or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, he was looking at the results every week, and no one had a clue. No one had a genuine clue what the hell he was on about. But he was like, these results mattered so much to him. It became a bit of a running theme, actually. It was quite a funny one.
So funny.
Yeah, AFR, doesn't surprise me you've had a piece of that. Bayern Munich, by the way, absolutely smoking Wolfsburg here. 3-0 after 19
already.
minutes.
Blimey.
Yeah, I mean, this is an absolute... I mean, they've been thrown to the wolves of Wolfsburg here. This is horrendous for them. This could end. Bayern got knocked out. They got knocked out, didn't they, in the Champions League midweek? And I think they're really, really angry about this. Although VAR might get involved for this third goal. But yeah, you mentioned there, Neil, actually about coming to the next weekend. PGA Championship is upon us. The golf major. I did ask Simon Holden on last week's show, and he gave some interesting opinions. So I thought I'd ask you as well, as I know you're well into the golf.
I am well into the golf.
So yeah, we were at Valhalla for the second major of the year. There's some great venues, by the way, this season. I do believe in the golf majors. There's some fantastic courses. Do you remember the duel with Tiger Woods and Bob May in 2000 at this same golf course? It's probably one of the best. Well, this is a funny
tournament, isn't it? Because you get, in the Masters, famously, people always say, "Oh, well, you've got all the old guys and they can't win," so it's a shortened field. But in this one, it's kind of even more. There's 155 players in it, but you have all these club players, the PGA pros, who can barely break par on a championship course. So actually, it is quite a kind of small field, really, of people that can actually win it. The other thing about this tournament is, what makes it different to the Masters is, of course, with the Masters, we're on the same course every year, whereas this tournament moves around. They haven't played at this course, I think, for 9 years, and before that, it was another 6 years before that. So it was 8 years before that. So course form is really out of the window. We don't really know. We can look at similar kind of courses. It's different grass type to some of the courses they play on it. It holds more water, this grass. And the rough is going to be quite high. The PGA used to be, you could win it -16 or -18 or something. And then I feel like there was a time where the committee sort of said, well, these players are taking the mick. We need to make it harder. So I think there'll be quite big rough around the greens. And the fairways they're not enormous. They're not tight though. So it's not a US Open, but it's more like a US Open than it used to be. I think what you need is a really long hitter, basically. And short game wise, it's not like the Masters where you need to make shots, scramble, chip, that kind of thing. Because if you miss the green, you're in the rough. Basically, you're in 4 inches of thick stuff. 6 inches maybe, and so whether you're good at scrambling or not doesn't really come into it. You're just going to drop shots in that situation. So
you've got to hit the greens, then, haven't you? Greens
you basically got to hit the greens. So you got to be long off the tee, and you got to hit the greens. So players like Victor Hovland, who maybe doesn't really have a great short game, he's not such a good chipper. He's not so disadvantaged here. So I could quite like him. I haven't actually made any bets yet, and I'm going to do a lot more work on it over the next couple of days. But he's quite interesting. I think Wyndham Clark's quite interesting. I think if I had to say someone that I would definitely be betting is going to be Ludwig Aberg. I think this course will really suit him. He's really long. I actually think the course is quite suitable for Xander Schauffele, but in this week's Wells Fargo, which finishes tonight, he's in a bit of a Titanic duel with Rory. And that slightly puts me off both of them, really, because, they're going to be coming here. Either they're going to be coming here off a win, in which case, they have a sort of letdown potential, or they're going to be coming here off a sort of coin flip loss, where they could be a bit fed up. So either way, it's not very good for either of them. The other person, of course, that dominates golf at the moment is Scotty Scheffler. And I don't know whether you remember at the Masters, there was a sort of a slight worry that he might pull out of the tournament because his wife was expecting a baby. And I remember waking up on the Sunday, I backed him and thinking, it's the only thing that can beat us now is his missus. And he managed to get through them. Well, that was weeks ago. And coming into this weekend, she still hadn't had the baby. And people were saying, well, he's going to pull out of the USPGA. But anyway, apparently he had the baby yesterday. Now, you're much younger than me, Steve. You probably don't remember a fella called Keith Elliott. Does that name ring a bell with you?
No, Keith Elliott. Elliott sounds like someone from the horse racing world, but
okay. So prior to the internet, back in the wonderful days when gamblers couldn't rely on the internet, had to use pen and paper. There was a fellow called Keith Elliott, and we used to read about sports betting in these things called books that they used to have. And this bloke Keith Elliott wrote a book about betting on golf. Which was amazing, really, because there wasn't even that many books about sports betting in those days. So having a book specifically about betting on golf was fabulous, especially if you like betting on golf. So I read that quite carefully, and it was like an annual, and he would have a list of all the players on the European tour and all the players on the American tour, and a little kind of detailed description of what they did well and what they did badly and what kind of courses they were suited by. And then he'd sort of say which tournaments he felt like they had their best chances in of the year. But one thing he came up with, which was his idea, which I'd never heard before, and it's definitely something that he invented, was the nappy factor. Now, the nappy factor was the idea that if a player in an individual sport like golf had just become a father, they would play better because, it seems a bit ridiculous because, and it may have changed slightly because of money, but there was a feeling that they now had to adopt more responsibility because they had a family to look after, and therefore they would play better because they needed the money and they wanted to. Arsenal scored, by the way, when I started. They scored ages ago, but I was going to say they've scored since I started this story, but it's a very long story. Anyway, the nappy factor was this idea that if you have a baby, you're going to play much better, and I think it did seem to work in golf. But I'm not sure. I think it really works. It doesn't work like if you have a baby the day before the tournament. I don't think that's a great thing because for Scheffler now, he's presumably not had much sleep over the last couple of days. Assuming he doesn't pull out of the PGA, he's going to have to travel to get there and settle in and play some practice rounds and whatever. And part of him is going to want to be at home with the baby, presumably. And yeah, I don't know whether that's a great preparation for this week. Also, like he's a pretty big hitter, but really where he makes his rounds are his shots approaching. He's brilliant. He is good tee off the tee, but really from his iron play is so good, and he's good around the green. So I think his around the green skill not so important in this tournament, and I think brute strength and long length is what you're going to need on this one. And although he's a pretty big hitter, that's not really where he makes his score. So I think I'm going to be against Scheffler this week. Controversially.
I was going to ask you. I was going to say plus 400, play or lay, and it sounds like it would be a lay.
Which and actually I'm a big fan of his. I think it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I'm probably going to bet him to win the US Open. But I think I'll avoid him this week.
Yes, I mean it's a really interesting one. Like Martin just said there, that happened in the ice hockey recently. Nappy factor is certainly a thing. I got a feeling he might be quite relieved actually. That I mean, this has been an ongoing thing for a while now with the.
Well, I'm sure he's relieved. I mean, it seems like I mean, elephants have had babies quicker than this woman.
I know it's so there might be relief, but sometimes that can also be a bad thing, if you know what I mean. I think I'm with you. I think maybe in 2 or 3 weeks' time, maybe that's the time to start getting on him where he's focusing.
Well, I mean, to be fair, if you just bet him every tournament, he'd be doing all right, really. But I think you need to, in golf, you should sort of pick your punches. I'm not a big fan of backing people religiously every week because obviously different courses suit different situations. But
just a quick word on Ludwig Orberg, because I know it was one of Simon Holden's fancies as well for this tournament, so there could be quite a significant gamble on him maybe as the week goes on. I mean,
he's known as both me and Simon are on.
I know
the world market could be shaken up.
Like, how good could he become? I mean, are we talking someone that could become the best in the world in time? Like,
well, he's definitely a real talent. Yeah, an amazing player,
and he's got the length on this course.
Yeah, this is. I think this is probably of the 4 majors. This is his best chance. I think
plus 1,600 with BetRivers, and you can also go each way with BetRivers. A quarter of the odds. 1 to 5 places. So each way, even if you finish 5th, you would still make some profit with BetRivers if you did back Ludwig Orberg in the US PGA. I'm looking forward to this. I don't watch much golf now, Neil, but I do watch the majors because everyone comes together for it. And, there's nothing quite like a major, is there? So,
well, this one's going to be really, the course will play really long. It's a long course anyway. There's big rough. But also the weather, there's been a lot of rain there. So, the ball's not going to be running along the fairway.
Yeah.
I think it's going to rule out so many players. And it means that you can narrow it down a bit, which is good.
Yeah. Question from Shay. Back to just the Euros here. Outrights. Will you back a number of teams on the exchange? Or will it be a mix of double-figure prices and then have some savers on some of the top-tiered nations? Sort of strategy, the outright betting strategy, I suppose, Neil, is a question here.
It's not a thing. The outright is not really where I get too involved. I mean, I'd probably just bet one team, really. I don't know who it will be. Maybe
will you have a look at any other markets, such as the side market? I don't know. We get Golden Glove, don't we? Golden Boot, player of the tournament is one that always does
like
my
those.
head
in. I like those markets in running. Those ones are good because they're hard to price up in running. I think sometimes you get into situations. Well, obviously you get nice each way situations. That's quite funny. sometimes you get a spot where there'll be like four guys that have scored, a few goals, and no one else has scored more than one or two, and you can still get each way first three. And I'll probably look out for those situations. I definitely like goals on the board against potential. So if some unusual player has scored kind of four goals in the group games, um, I'll probably be looking to bet him at a big price, rather than a guy who was one of the favourites who's only on two goals, uh, to come back. So
Yeah,
I
that
tend
happened
to.
in the African nations this year, I do believe.
Mm,
Someone from Equatorial Guinea got the golden boot because he scored like a hat trick in a group game,
yeah.
and it caught quite a few out because no one expected him to stay hot, basically, and he kind
I
of did.
think people in that situation, that kind of goes against what I said before, that the market does tend to go along with their original perception on who the best strikers are, and
Yeah,
ignores the what's actually happened. And it's different because obviously, if somebody scored some goals, you can't take it away from them. It's not recency bias to say, well, I'm going with that guy that's got five goals after three games. He's got five goals. It's not the market getting carried away. Yeah, that's kind of a funny. It seems to sort of disagree with what I said before, really, in some ways.
yeah. Emilio Nsue, that was his name. Equatorial Guinea was the top scorer in this year's
Were
African
you on?
Cup. No, but I remember what I think. No, I wasn't. I didn't get on at any point, but I know I wish I had got on after the group stage, because I just knew that when the knockout round started in the African nations, you generally get a lot of unders, and the goals are
Yeah,
just not going to pile up. And I should have known better than to trust that one of the bigger names like Victor Osimhen's was still in there right till the death. Would It's always like the thing that Osimhen's bound to fire at some point. He's bound to fire
yeah.
eventually. You're not going to hit a brace of goals in a semi-final or a final, are you? It just doesn't happen very often.
No, you're
So
right. You're right.
yeah, I missed out there, Neil. But yeah. So anyway, back to this Arsenal game. It is 1-0 Arsenal, like we said. So expected that we didn't even really mention it.
Somebody
But,
should write a song about that.
it was it was Trossard who got on the score sheet. It was an assist by Kai Havertz. Since then, I've had the game on in the background. It's quite an open game, actually. I think Manchester United are here they'll have a go. I think they knew they were not going to keep a clean sheet here. But it gets to a certain stage in the game, like you said earlier, Neil. Arsenal just need to win the match, and the goal line's actually gone down since we started. Over 3.5 goals is now plus 123.
Yeah, yeah,
Even though there's
yeah.
been one goal scored.
Yeah, obviously, if it was 1-0 at half time, that would be not a great first half for over 3.5 backers.
Yeah. So Simon, sorry, not Simon. Shane says, thanks very much for answering all the questions. You've been brilliant as always, Neil. And
God
just
bless.
I think you are part of the crew that has been penciled in for next week for a
I know
live
it's
reaction
exciting. We're
show.
doing like Soccer Saturday stuff, aren't we? We're
Yeah.
all going
Now
to be
this could
watching the
be.
last games. I'll have to be screaming and doing my best Chris Kamara, and
I think it's going to be really
unbelievable,
interesting
Steve.
because I've got a feeling there might be a few people out there who are very interested in maybe a strategy of in-running Bane, Neil, which perhaps you might be able to
Well,
talk
that'll
about
be.
next
I
week.
mean, it should be a good week. I'm definitely
Um,
going to bet some goals in those games.
but I don't know. For those who I know, I've had a few people message me on Twitter about this. I don't know exactly what time it's going to start. I think the boss Nigel Seeley is going to be sorting that out through the week. As far as I'm aware, we're hoping Nigel's going to be on as well, along with Jack Wright from the Premier League show. So it's going to be rather exciting. It will be the last reaction show of the year, live here on the App Because We Win channel. I want to say a big thanks to everyone. We have now reached over 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. So, I mean, we only just
Oh
started this
wow!
channel
I
back
mean,
in
that's happened
July.
despite the fact that you never tell people to make sure they click subscribe, which
I
is
know you had
free, and you could do it now. Just hit that button.
Well, the reason I didn't say it because I knew you would say it, Neil. You see, but you're absolutely right. If you haven't subscribed to us, then do hit that subscribe button and give us a like if you feel we deserve it. And do follow us on the Instagram channel as well.
Oh yeah, you got that one in. That's it. You saved yourself by you covered on the Instagram.
I have to mention the Instagram because we want to get to 1,000 followers. We're at 981.
Oh, what's happened at Old Trafford?
Looks like there might be a VAR check for a possible Manchester United penalty.
Oh my God.
Diallo has gone down. There's the link to the Instagram channel. I'm sure anyone watching this does follow us on Instagram, although there are a few comments this week about a few people too old for Instagram, and we're hoping that we might share a few tidbits on Twitter instead. But there has been, exclusive in-running plays from the handicappers pre-game as well. Sean Calvert is involved with that as well. Rory Jawani's had some picks from the WTA. There's the parlay picks that we got from our handicappers over the weekend. So Instagram is apparently it's a growing trend, Neil, along with TikTok. I think we might be having a TikTok account over the summer.
I mean, do I look 20?
Well, you've not got any grey hairs, have you? Like I said to you off screen earlier. So
I mean, you haven't even mentioned Facebook.
Facebook. Well, I don't even go on Facebook now. But Facebook, I feel like Facebook's era was about 10 years ago.
The Facebook is for granddads, basically.
Anyway, we are out of time for this week, and
it's been lovely.
We thank you, Neil, and also for your obviously great contribution over the whole season on the one-on-one here.
I've enjoyed it. I mean, I can't believe I managed to find enough to say when I know so little about football. So
I have to say, you've really got at answering the questions that are thrown in. I like you. Some people really struggle with that, but you always seem to have a very good response for anything thrown at you. So
hopefully, I didn't actually see the questions. Sometimes they come up really quickly on the screen. Hopefully, you just avoided asking me any of the awkward ones.
There's anything that can be answered will be put up there. But thanks again, Neil. Thanks everyone. If you're watching live, appreciate you. If you watch on demand as well, we appreciate you too. And good luck over the week ahead, Neil, with the PGA Championship and any other bets that you're on. Yeah, and we'll see you next Sunday. Next Sunday. We don't know what time yet for the final Premier League live round. It's going to be fun. So take care, everyone. Stay safe. Goodbye.